and welcome to episode 17 of the Hola Guapa podcast. For those of you who are new to the show, I'm your host, Nisha Patesh. I'm also the founder and creative at Hola Guapa, a digital community of almost 12,000 artists and creatives from all over the world. A blog, a website, an online shop, podcast, and most recently, a small batch slow fashion line. On this podcast, we take creative conversations even further, sharing the real stories, tips, and tricks the artists in this community have found on their journeys to success. Meet Bridget Thompson, fellow textile designer and lover of travel and anthropology. On this episode, we chat through the rich history of textiles and fabric design, including fiber and fabric technology, as well as textiles, social, political, and cultural impacts on the fashion and interior design industries. Bridget is not only knowledgeable and experienced in her craft, but also passionate beyond her years. What I loved learning most about her creative journey is how, like me, she also works a 9-to-5 in an industry she loves, and in her spare time, she's focused on building and growing her creative hustle and brand. You truly can do it all. It's refreshing to hear her candor as she recalls the highs and lows she's faced to this point, balancing being an entrepreneur, designer, and adult. So if you're at all interested in textile design or learning more about building or creating your own brand while also working a day job, then this is the episode for you. And with that, let's get into the show.
I am Bridget. I'm a surface pattern designer. I've worked in textiles and fashion, and I'm now a full-time wallpaper designer for a company called Wall Shop. We also do fabric for upholstery and table, etc., home goods. And I love to create drawings and print and pattern designs for like any kind of surface output.
Awesome. Yeah, I know as we previously chatted about that, you and I have always kind of shared that love for textile design. And as, shared in your written feature on Hola Guapa, that you got a lot of this passion and inspiration through traveling with your dad at a really young age and kind of, finding all of the different textiles that were indigenous to the different places that you were traveling. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then I want to get caught up all the way to current day.
Awesome. So yeah, actually, I did travel a lot as a young person. Weirdly enough, my dad has this niche working in the airline industry, which he has done my whole life. And so a great benefit of that is being able to travel with your family. So I kind of grew up traveling to different places. I think our first family vacation, outside of the United States, was in Brazil, because he had business there. So that was so eye-opening to go there as a young person, a completely different place from where I grew up in Northern California. And kind of since then, I spent a lot of my younger teenage, young adult years traveling, and I studied anthropology and art as well as a college student. So I kind of built that aspect of traveling into my interest, into my education. And of course, textiles and seeing different textiles around the world, was part of that as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. I always get inspired, by finding out how other people get inspired. And something with textiles that's super specific, especially in the world of anthropology, if you share both loves, is, being able to really support the people who are creating those textiles from all around the world as well. So that's such a cool tie-in.
Yeah, and I think that especially with fabrics and textiles, there is such a much more rich history outside of the United States in places like Mexico, Guatemala, West Africa, and just kind of realizing that there's a lot of history with textiles and with fabric, and kind of human history and socio-political history, that it all makes it this incredible art form that I think really inspired me on multiple levels, visually, intellectually, with my heart and soul. And yeah, I think that you're very much right in speaking to kind of learning about the cultures behind different kinds of fabric, more so than just myself as an artist designing whatever I think looks cool or good. I think that very much so you can get into a deeper, richer history with fabric and textiles.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree with you. I think it's interesting too with artists, whether or not you choose your medium or your medium chooses you. And it sounds like it totally chose you in a variety of different ways. Like you said, from everything that you've studied to what you're doing now. And so I kind of want to dive into that a little bit. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you studied in school and then how that path took you to the current roles that you're in today.
Yeah, I love that you say it chose me. I think that's so awesome because it totally has kind of always been there, like following me around, And it wasn't until I like gave into it more. But so yeah, I always loved fashion design and would like didn't really necessarily like study it like in a hard skill sense a lot in college. Like I always did workshops and just kind of was obsessed, of course, with fashion. But it wasn't until I worked in fashion after college, and then I actually went back to grad school to do my master's in fibers, which is basically textile design. So I kind of, for me, the formal education was just kind of a part of my journey, and I actually love school and I love learning, so it was okay for me to do that. And I think also getting it at that intellectual level was really just fulfilling for me personally. And yeah, and so it has taken me to a professional designer now for about the past 3.5 years.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I think, within the textile industry, there is so much to learn about, even kind of what you were going back to, whether it be from like a inspiration or passion perspective, when you're learning about different people's cultures and backgrounds and how different textiles are made. And it's all really very much slow fashion, if you will. There's nothing fast or quick about it. And I think it's kind of that same process when you're studying like fibers and fabric technology, and there's so much to learn. And with technology moving so quickly, I'm sure that helped incredibly when you're applying it to like a professional career in textile related industry.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, you know this because you also studied textiles, but it's true. It's like at some point I needed those hard skills of like learning the new technology and like it's just you have to kind of keep up with those things. And even now, like I tell undergrad students, like learn as many like obviously I'm a huge fan of artisanal like skills and methods and of craft in general, but it is really important to incorporate technology and kind of like learn about fiber technology if you are interested in like pursuing it as a career, and if that's your path as a designer per se, maybe not necessarily as a fine artist, but it's something
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
that's kind of what I like about your journey so much is that, you're doing both. For me, when I graduated, the thing that I loved most about textiles was really getting to work with my hands and sort of get messy. And I know you did screen printing as well, but that was like really where my heart and my passion lied. And so when I went to go start applying for jobs after college, it was all digital. Everything was like doing new colorways and resizing and scaling, and it was just all on computers. So it seems like you're really living in both worlds right now, in your kind of professional career, and then as well as growing your own business and brand. So how do you sort of balance the two? Do you lean into one and the other to kind of support the other, or talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that anyone who's interested in like in textiles in general knows that battle of like the hand, your handwork versus your digital work. And that was a great thing about being in school was being able to explore both and like incorporate both into my work, which was amazing. Like I loved like machine knitting. I mean, that's still using technology, but it's more tactile. But in my work now I mean digital definitely comprises a lot of my work, and like as a designer you're just like busting out colorways, you're like creating repeats, 3 repeats in a minute, just kind of it's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, I am, I'm an artist too, and I sometimes I'll have to like take a break and just draw or like scan in paintings and just completely like, we're not machines. Like we have, for me, I personally really believe in having some kind of like painting or like hand drawing practice because while digital is amazing and I love it, it's not really totally satisfying all of the time.
Yeah, I love that. And it seems like, again, like you really kind of get to lean into both with what you're doing in your 9 to 5 career. Can you kind of talk to us in a little bit more detail about that aspect of your creative journey? And then I also want to dive into, your own brand and business that you're developing as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so with the 9 to 5, it is that, it is my day job, but it also is a way for me to explore my own creativity. And I'm in the industry of interiors, which is really interesting. Um, it's actually really amazing. I feel like there's a lot of freedom with interiors and like kind of interior design, at least compared to fashion in my experience. And I would say that I'm very much encouraged to explore creativity, and like any, art and design related industry, you always want to create new things, new exciting things, like something that's ahead of the trend, ahead of the curve. And that's where I think having that kind of art practice of the balance between the digital and the hand comes in, because that allows for so much more experimentation and just kind of like you need that space to be creative.
Yeah, I love that you talk about that. And I think the whole reason I'm asking so many questions about that portion of your creative journey is because I think that often, like, what I've found is sometimes on social media you can be portrayed one way, and I love to really be like transparent about the conversation and share that, like, during the day you're building your skill set and you're totally staying creative and focused, but you are working, to be honest, at a job that brings in a paycheck while you're still building your brand and your business. And I think that it's okay to be able to say that you're doing it all. And what I really love about that, especially like during some of these creative conversations, is that it it often seems like people think it's going to take away from building their business and their brand. And what you've done is you've created a space where it's actually going to foster and support your business and your brand, staying within the same industry, but obviously kind of honing into different skill sets. So I want to talk a little bit about the brand that you're developing and kind of get your whole spiel there as well.
Yeah, and Nisha, let me say just to that point also, like a little anecdote is that so I love this artist. Her name is Lucy Simpson. I think her Instagram is like Lucy M Simpson. And I was like always so inspired by her super experimental work. She does like fibers and she uses like resin. And I was kind of following her when she was in grad school in Italy and just loving her work. And then I noticed that she kind of stopped posting on Instagram, and she ended up getting like a job for like a huge like fashion house in Italy. And I was like, I can, not that I can relate to that part of her experience, but I can just relate to the part of like when you're really full in, another business or company, and you can't necessarily post like the work that you're doing or that you're working on. And I think you're completely right in saying that, I'm building my skills in other ways, and kind of just acknowledging that, even if like I'm not creating all the work that I want to be creating as an artist all the time, I just have to have patience with that. And I know you've talked about that in your other podcast episodes about creative cycles. So yeah, but to the point of my own brand, I basically sell like print and pattern design, and kind of freelance with clients and kind of consult them on projects and create prints based on the projects that they're working on. And it's kind of been like an up and down of having some work, having no work. And it's really all about the time and the effort and the energy that I'm putting into it. So it's really interesting, trying to start as a creative business entrepreneur, and then just realizing it's going to take so much more time than I could have ever imagined.
I know, doesn't it? It's always like, okay, well, here's my business plan, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year. And then it's like a year and you did like half the stuff, but you don't understand like how long everything takes. And I think even from like an outsider's perspective, like I've had that same experience with friends and family where they're like, a year from now you're gonna do that? And I'm like, I have to learn all these other things to get to that place where I can, execute. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of like what have been some of the toughest parts in starting your own business? Maybe what surprised you the most, and then what's been the most rewarding?
Okay, yes. So the toughest parts, I would say, is kind of my own self battle, which is sounds really cheesy to say, but it's really true. I started working with a friend who's building like a digital agency. It's called Saturday-ish. And he basically was like, you have to just do it, like, and get out of your own way, and all this stuff that we hear about from like every creative entrepreneur book and self-help guide, but it's really true. So I think the biggest struggle is kind of just figuring out, okay, what do I really want, and just talking to myself and like figuring out those things with myself. And then the biggest surprise, I think, has just been how like positively my work has been received by even just like my friends and family who are already supportive, but just even strangers who have just been like, I'll buy this, like, do this for me. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to. Like, it's been really amazing to just kind of come out of that like self-doubt and yeah, just go for it. It's a journey for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's like such a good point as well, because often a really like theme that keeps repeating itself on this podcast is self-doubt. And I think it's just in all of us. I think whether you're creative or not, there's always kind of that like record playing of self-doubt, and it's kind of whatever you do to turn it off and say, shh, go away. Is there anything that you can speak to? Is there a book, a podcast? I know you love music. Is there anything that you're doing right now that's really kind of helping you to calm down that chatter?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Something I'm focused on actually, like in this moment, just like at this time, is kind of finding myself as an artist again, and just having fun with it. And I think just like trying new things. I'm starting like a ceramics class next month,
I
and just
love that.
expand, like just remembering, like kind of hushing that self doubt with like just going for all these other things, and just like kind of just forgetting about it, honestly, and just like
Yeah.
remembering like myself, and like remembering what inspires me, which can easily melt away when you're grinding as a designer and simultaneously adulting. So I think just finding that inspiration again of art, and yeah, music is amazing as well, for sure.
Yeah, and I know like one of the things that you've mentioned is how important it is for you to be an entrepreneur and to turn your art into a business. And it seems like right now you're in this like very like open space of working on freelance projects and commissions and sort of reaching out to friends and family and word of mouth, and even like taking these classes. Like you're just open to different mediums and techniques, and it's like you're doing all that, and eventually you'll land in one spot where you can sort of hone in, find your niche, or maybe not, and build and continue building your business and your brand that way. Why is it so important for you to turn your art into a business? Because I always find this topic fascinating. Like, why not just work in your career, make your money that way, and then, do this on the side for fun?
Yeah, 100%. And like at times it does feel like kind of this goal that I just created for myself. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why is that there? Like, why is that on my calendar? Like
Yeah.
I could be at the beach or something. But I I just I just have it in me, honestly. My mom is an entrepreneur, and like her dad was an entrepreneur, and um I just feel like I want that challenge. Like I want that challenge in life and as an artist, and it's very fulfilling, and like to me, to be able to create my own designs. And I don't know if you can speak to that as well, but it just, like, your work honestly inspires me so much also, and like your drive and the way that you uplift the community. And I think that, like, if I can do that for other people too one day, like that would be amazing, to like inspire people through my art. And yeah, I think it's possible. I believe it's in within reach. So I maybe it's my naive optimism, but I have always had that plan for myself to run my own creative business.
No, it definitely is. And thank you for saying all those sweet things. I think it's such a good point, because it's almost like your medium, like you just don't choose to be, like it's just something sort of like beyond, like you said, it's like a goal that you created for yourself. And sometimes like I have that same feeling where I'm looking at my calendar and I'm like, okay, wait, I just worked all day and now I have to do this and this and this, but those are all like checklists that I created for myself. So it can be really hard, but it's almost just like this larger pull, like you have to create, you have to keep putting out content, you have to keep putting out art, like it's just in you.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like a purpose. And for me, it's something I prioritize. I'm completely invested in my career and my passion. And I will, I will work day and night to contribute to that. Like it's kind of more important to me than, other things like having just being comfortable in a job and like as you
Yep.
said, make your money and like which
Yep.
is great. And like sometimes I'm like, that really doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah, no, I hear you, because it's exhausting. It can be exhausting often.
But it's
Is
probably rewarding too, for all the effort that you give, it's like you get so much back.
100%. And I remember like having just had graduated college and trying to start my own business and literally knowing absolutely nothing and just having that drive. And I think that like the whole reason I created Ola Guapa was to create that space that I just didn't feel like I had at that time, where it was like a community of artists doing the same thing. Like I often felt like whoever I was reaching out to, like they already had it all figured out. And I was like trying to figure out what that secret sauce is. And I kind of wish at the time somebody had told me like there's no secret sauce, it's just hard work and dedication, and that's really all you can do every single day when you wake up.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can relate too. Is there anything that's kind of surprised you about building a business? Anything that you would do differently? I know, like for example, a lot of the social media aspect for me wasn't something that I had originally planned to spend so much time in or on. I know you also have built your own gorgeous website. Is there anything, any kind of tips, tricks, tools that you could share for the females coming up behind you in regards to starting your own business?
Sure. So something that seems foundational to me is having a creative community and having other, friends who are painters or artists or designers around you who share similar values, because having that motivation and impetus around you kind of also, helps you to work more. And I've done collaborations with friends, which has been so helpful and also helped me create more work. And then I would also say that you need help. Like I have, worked with this organization in LA called the Forward Female, and it's a great group of female entrepreneurs, and just having that kind of community and support and people who are going to hold you accountable and like see you like succeed. So I would say community is foundational, and then also just patience with yourself, not being too hard on yourself, knowing that everything will take time. I mean, I'm assuming that if you're interested in having your own business, you're probably a pretty proactive person. And Nisha, and I'm sure you can relate, it's kind of just like having that patience of like knowing that timing is everything. And then I would also say just not doing anything for free. um, you know, like value yourself, charge for your value, and because those things really add up and your time adds up. And yeah, it's important to make that money.
I love that. And I think that's probably something that people struggle with the most too, is finding sort of a rhythm or a roadmap around how to charge for their work. And I think that that can always be a touchy subject, because often if you don't understand art, you don't always understand the value or what goes into the back end of creating something. Like I think, I've talked about it before on the podcast, where it's like, it'll take you 2 hours. Let's say you're a photographer, it'll take you 2 hours on set, but all the experience and all the knowledge that you're bringing to that set, it also goes into, an overall cost. Is there any sort of tool that you use to help gain confidence around charging for your work?
Yeah, I would say, again, like using my community and like I have like a WhatsApp group message with my friends from grad school who are from all over the world. And I'm like, okay, how much do you make in your job?
I
What's your
love that.
salary? Like, it's so important. And it's
Yeah.
so like, it's like such a relief to open up that conversation. And we'll text like every couple of weeks, okay, I'm doing this project for a client, I'm charging this, and and then the others will be like, yeah, like charge more, or I charged this amount on a similar project. And like, yeah, it's such a gift to have those people around you. And if you don't, I mean, there's like so many resources online to learn about that. And personally, I've used the Textile Design Lab, which is a great resource. They do like workshops and classes, and you can download templates and PDFs to send to clients. And, I had done that on one of the first freelance projects I was working for. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to create a price sheet, and which is so basic, but like foundational, of course, and great to have just in your in your back pocket to pull out. And like that's something, in all transparency, I'm completely still working on, total work in progress, and I'm sure it will be until I really work the kinks out of like what I'm charging and what my work is and who it's for. So
Totally. That's like that thing that kind of keeps pushing you to keep going, because even like even now, but I remember like more so when I first kind of started my own creative journey, where somebody would say, like, I would reach out to a store that I loved, that I wanted to be a part of, and I wanted them to carry my work, and they would say, okay, can you send over a line sheet? And I was like, what's a line sheet? But to them, I was like, yes, of course, I'll send that over to you by end of day. And I would just like Google it really quickly. So I think that, being able to share those resources like the design lab, where it's like, you, it can potentially make that process a little easier, or just make the resource more readily available for those who are still on that journey themselves, I think is really helpful and very valuable to talk about.
yeah, definitely. I um like, it's funny how, even having studied this in school, and we took a lot of classes about like professional practices, and I did internships and everything, but of course nothing's going to prepare you for that moment when they're like, give us a line sheet, and you don't know what that is. Like, it just takes experience, which is totally cool. That's why we're in this game. We're just
Yep.
learning.
And I love that you created your own little community of, girls that you met in school. And I think, to your point, there's tons of places and resources where you can do that. I know, when I had Alice Mulder on the podcast, she was talking about creating a community like within a cafe. So kind of just saying from 3 to 6 on the first Thursday of every month, we go to a cafe and we all just bring our art there and we just create there together. And often you can kind of bounce ideas back and forth, like whether you're doing a line drawing, or you're working digitally on an iPad, or you're knitting, or whatever it might be. It's just so important to have community, whether it's digitally over a WhatsApp group, whether it's, meeting in a cafe once a month, whatever it might be. But I think that can often get lost, and you can feel extremely alone and isolated if you're not making the effort to build that and to have that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it does take some like personal motivation to seek that out, and like, it is very important. But I mean, also being in Los Angeles, I've been here for almost 2 years now, and it's a great creative community. There is, fortunately, like there's so many art shows and galleries and exhibits that like you kind of have to actively not be like looking for that to seek it out and to find it. And like in general, it's a creative place to be, and that's why I moved here. It's a great place for design and inspiration, and especially some of the inspiration that I'm really drawn to, which is like California, uniquely Californian design, some like mid-century modern aspects, and then also like technically, Los Angeles has like the best quote unquote natural lighting in the world, which is a really cool fun fact.
You're in the
Um,
right place.
yeah, it's your environment absolutely like makes a difference for sure.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't agree with that more. And I think even in terms of like building community, I'm not sure what the other, girls in your chat do, but it's like even cross mediums, I think can be really helpful too. One of the things I know that you're passionate about talking about is hustling for clients. Can you touch on that a little bit and kind of share what that means to you? And, if your community has sort of helped to bridge that gap or any of those conversations as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that what hustling for clients means to me is basically not holding back from reaching out to people that you want to collaborate with, or artists, or like people who are going to buy your work, like companies, businesses, even if that means like doing like I know I said don't do anything for free, but if that means doing like a pro bono for like a good cause or something like that, I think like it's kind of like no shame when it comes to like advocating for yourself. And something that, yeah, my friends have taught me, who are designers in like New York, Guatemala, India, is that to to like keep your network strong, and like maybe someone needs your help for like their 9 to 5 business. One of my friends in Guatemala like works for her mom's company. It's kind of like a family business, and they partner with artisans in indigenous communities in Guatemala. And like there's always something there that I know that if I was interested in pursuing like some kind of work or collaboration, that's an option. And I think like just kind of like honestly like having a professional network, I think is part of that, like clients, and which is why I'm so grateful for being a full-time designer as well, because as much as like I want to be my own artist and freelancer, having that network is like pretty priceless.
Yeah, and it's another kind of like learned skill set, which I think often isn't like talked about during school or college or even like high school, which I feel like it should be talked about at such an earlier age. But networking is definitely a skill, and I think it doesn't come super easy to everybody. So you kind of have to practice to get to where you want to be. Is there a sort of an experience that you can share where you're creating your strong network has really paid off, or a moment that you're kind of thinking of as you bring this up?
Yeah, I would say that I moved to Los Angeles, like I said, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I basically knew that once I got here, I was going to be networking low key all the time. And I went to a sample sale for this fashion brand and just was like talking to some people there, and ended up having a conversation with someone who was looking for a print and pattern designer. And I made some drawings for their brand. And it was like a really cool experience that like I couldn't have planned for, but it was really all because I was just networking without even realizing it. And I think just like staying in touch with those people and like keeping them in your network and like following up with them throughout time is just like it's really cool how you can kind of, and for me, I do like to travel too. So it's like fun to be like, okay, I know this person in this place and, and this person here. But it really depends on you being able to keep those connections, because you could be the most talented artist in the world, but like no one would know your work. So it's really just kind of like what your personal motivation is with your goals and like your creativity.
Yeah, I love that you touch on that, because I think it's been sort of an interesting journey, like as I reach out to artists or they reach out to me, just in terms of building the Old Guapa community. And that's kind of in a way what I see as my network. I would never like call it that, but I guess it is that. And I think something that I've always mentioned and kept in the back of my mind is just be nice, because
Yeah.
like it's sometimes it's hard to remember, especially when we're talking over screens so much. And it's not even like it's not even that anybody would be mean or go out of their way to be mean, but I just mean that you never know how that connection with that person is going to come back full circle, whether it be 2 weeks from now, 2 years from now, or like a decade from now. So it sounds like you have a personal
It's
experience
so
there.
true. No, it's so true. And especially if you're in a niche industry, like doing print and pattern designs, or like specifically focused on one art form, you're probably going to interact with those people again, like from a previous job or what have you. And I mean, I guess we're learning today that professionalism is an important skill to have as a creative, which is kind of like counterintuitive, because you would think that we would be like, like, do forget about like social niceties, like focus on your art. But yeah, it is really important.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like something that society kind of has always put on artists and creatives, is like, well, they're this other thing, and professional is over here, and they're just not a part of that
Exactly.
world. And I think that a lot of the artists that I speak to, including you, they're really like doing everything to change that narrative. So I think that that's really powerful to share that as well.
Yeah, and I think it adds value to our work. Like, we're seen as a whole person. And something that I was thinking about too is that we're like, I'm not just an artist. Like, you're not just an artist. You are a content creator, you're a marketer, you're like a brand curator. Like, and we know this, of course, but it's funny how, yeah, society kind of sees us in one way, or yeah, it would just be great if the value of artists could just rise and just be uplifted, because it is a lot of work. And I don't know, I think things are going that way in general. And obviously with just visual art and like Instagram, I think that like there's a lot more value placed on what we're looking at every day, and the beauty and aesthetics of everything.
I totally agree. And I think that's something that's always been kind of interesting for me, is like when I first fell in love with fashion, it was sort of always about the end result. Like, yeah, I was always a curious person, and I always wanted to know. I guess I was fascinated by process, but not as much as I am today, and not as much as I've started, building my own brand. And I think being like super transparent about my process, like I think something that I always keep in the back of my mind is like my product is my process. And I think being able to share that with my community is something that has sort of like liberated me in a sense. It's not just this like picture perfect shirt where every detail is perfect and it's presented on a silver platter, or this like pair of earrings that's just like, here you go. It's like, I like to take whoever the end wearer is through that journey of where I'm sourcing my materials, and what I'm getting inspired by, and what my printing technique looks like, to when I'm creating, to what the materials are. And I think that that's something that I can tell that you're really interested in as well. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I absolutely cannot agree more. I think that's beautiful. And I agree. I I mean, coming from like more of a background in human science and just value in general, I think that humans want like value in their products and what they're wearing. And as someone who is already like attuned to those things, like that's what I seek out when I buy something. Um, and I think that's what makes things unique. And it's just not sustainable anymore to buy things at service value. I don't think that like, I don't, I find that very few people, like that's not really a trend. Let's just put it that
Yeah.
way. Like it's more trending to like know the maker and to know the process and
Yeah.
to have some ethical or sustainable values as part of the product, because like ultimately that's the most interesting thing, you know. And
Yep.
I think that there is in society there it's a lot more taboo in 2021 to like to buy anything, whether it be like fashion or accessories, without knowing the maker or like knowing the process or having some understanding of like the cultural and aesthetic value of the product, if it's something made in a different country especially. And yeah, I think I mean, your brand is amazing, and that's something that attracted me to it as well. And like, wow, really valuing that art. So I think probably in general, everyone could afford like more of like an arts education as part of
Yeah, right.
as part of our like education system.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I completely agree with that. And I love to incorporate my process into my work. And kind of for me, the the end product is meaningless without like the process and the work, because it's such a beautiful part of creation.
Yep, I completely agree. Totally lost my train of thought.
I can speak more to that also.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So when I lived in Mexico City in 2019, I was working for fashion designer Carla Fernandez, and it's basically slow fashion, and she works with artisans in like communities all over Mexico. And their process is like such a huge part of their product. And I think that like that kind of cultivated even more of like an appreciation of like where I stand on fashion and like making art, and this kind of like collision of like art and design that is like a very niche industry and like isn't sustainable in the sense that it doesn't have mass appeal. But just like kind of understanding that beauty really, I think, speaks to me, and is just like very fulfilling as an artist.
Yeah, I think that, something that like stands out to me about you and your work is that you just sort of are so invested in it from all angles. Like I said, I think just from kind of your upbringing and what you studied in school and a lot of your different life experiences, and how you're invested like in the cultural aspect of textiles as well as the design and the process and being an entrepreneur. And I think it sort of culminates into this like beautiful recipe, and success is 100% in your future. I think, like I said, if you keep at it. What I know that when we did your written feature, you were talking about kind of like a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, and a 5-year plan, which seems funny after going through COVID, because it's like, what is a plan anymore? What even is today anymore? But if we could ask what the future of Bridget Thompson looks like, whether it be in the near future or sort of far off in the distant future, what's your answer there?
Thank you for asking that. I would say that my goal with my personal brand is to have my own textile and surface design studio that collaborates with fashion designers, brands, interior designers, basically clients coming to seek out specifically my work. And in terms of a timeline, you're so right about COVID just changing the timelines of our lives. I would say that it's looking like, initially I thought, it'd be sooner, but I'm really finding that my job is offering me a lot of experience and skills. And it's something that I'll stick with probably for, another year or so. So the Bridget Thompson surface design brand will be kind of slowly rolling out over the next, I would say, 2022. And yeah, so now I'm held accountable. Let's all watch and see.
Everybody shoot her a DM
Yes,
in 2022.
please.
Where is Bridget Thompson? No, I love that. I love that. And I love that you're doing it slow. For me, I know there's a lot of different ways to get there, but to me, slow has always felt right for me. So I totally know where you're coming from. And I'm so excited for everything that you have in store. And I just really thank you for coming on and kind of sharing your creative journey with us. Is there anything sort of, whether it be a book, a resource, a podcast, anything that you would want to share, or anything that you want to add and just bring to the Ola Guapa community?
Yeah, I would say that in terms of resources, I think I mentioned like the Forward Female, and then the digital agency I'm working with is Saturday-ish. And those are more geared towards like really creative business entrepreneurship. Of course, I love the NPR podcast, How I Built This. It's amazing and addictive. And then, yeah, the only other thing I would say is just like really diving into your inspiration and the artists who inspire you, and kind of the history of the artists, because I think that like can really inform you and inspire you in new ways.
Awesome. And where can we find you? Pimp yourself out. Share your Instagram, website. If anybody wants to reach out for a collaboration or a commission, where can we find you?
Yeah, so my website is www.bridgetbstudio.com. My Instagram is at bridgetbstudio, and there is a platform to contact me on my website if you're interested in collaboration or have a print and pattern idea for your business. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me via DM or email.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. Well, thank you for coming on, Bridget. It was so great talking to you.
Thank you, Nisha.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Bridget Thompson. I hope you gained as much value and inspiration from her story as I did. If you love what you heard, please make sure you rate and review this episode on Apple Music and or Spotify. It really helps to spread episodes like this one to other creatives looking for their daily dose of inspiration, and I would be forever grateful. But before we go, if you haven't already, make sure you head over to holaguapa.com to check out this month's collection of Guapa Girls you won't want to miss out on. Head over to holaguapa.com and discover your new favorite female-owned and artist-made brands today. With that, have a beautiful week, Guapas. As always, sending you tons of inspiration and lots of love.